Are you ready, kids?
Hello, it's Employee a Million, and welcome back to SpongeComs. Today's episode is episode 29, or season 2, episode 9, which will be about Survival of the Idiots and Dumped, both of which originally aired on Nickelodeon on May 19th, 2001. And luckily for me, because it is still very hot down here in New Zealand, and these are pretty cold episodes. Survival of the Idiots is set in a cold place, and Dumped is based on cold-hearted soap opera cliches, so not the biggest fan of Dumped, but, we'll see how it turns around here. This is gonna be fun. Survival of the Idiots was originally called Survival of the Morons, but it probably needed to be changed to Idiots to make the reference to Survival of the Fittest a little more obvious. And it was written by Aaron Springer, C.H. Greenblatt, and Meriwether Williams. And it says in the credits that it was actually directed by Aaron Springer, and you can really tell that because although there are a few mistakes here and there is still this energy here that you don't often see in the early seasons, a certain vibe to it, and I do really like the vibe that this episode gives off, but yeah, you can tell that there was probably some issues in production on certain things, like those bubbles probably didn't need to be in the little tree dome front entrance, but it's fine that they're there, just gives us a little bit more underwater time. And also, the bits of SpongeBob and Patrick putting on and taking off their water helmets don't look quite as polished as the other bits of animation in this episode, weirder facial expressions and poses. And that's because in the original storyboard, C.H. Greenblatt didn't care to put on the water helmets, so they had to think of a workaround with how to do that in the episode, and it was pretty clear it's a snowy environment, and snow is just frozen water, so makes total sense to do it like that. Still, SpongeBob sheds a tear while inside the the helmet, so that's a little weird, but otherwise, it has very little bearing on the rest of the episode, except for the very end where they're still, for some reason, not wearing their helmets at the very end, even though the water's all cleared up. It's very strange when you think about the logistics of it, but the episode doesn't really think about the logistics of it after one scene, so nor will the average viewer. And this is surprisingly the fourth episode of this season to hypothetically think what Sandy would do during winter. In Bubble Buddy, she goes south. In Pre-Hibernation Week, she just sleeps standing up all winter, I guess. In Christmas, she celebrates Christmas, though maybe Bikini Bottom's in the southern hemisphere, maybe you don't need to worry about that, but in Survival of the Idiots, she sleeps in the tree dome and turns into this bear-like beast after stocking up on so many acorns. It's a very weird use for Sandy, but I do kind of like it. Now, originally the plan was to have her hanging from a ceiling bed or maybe a hammock of some sort. I don't know if they cut it for time or if they had a drool joke that didn't really work. But yeah, Sandy may not be in top shape here, but she doesn't really need to be for these jokes to work. Something that I really, really like about this episode is that it's kind of a jack of all trades for SpongeBob joke concepts. Like, you've got this very morbid one with Pat back, which we haven't seen come back, and I'm a bit happy about that. And there's also a very long one with SpongeBob and Patrick moving their eyebrows up and down, and then there's a bunch of wordplay, there's a bunch of visual gags, animated and live action, so they really hit all corners of the SpongeBob joke book, and I really appreciate an episode that does that and can give a you coming viewer a good idea of what SpongeBob is. Not that you really need it anymore now that SpongeBob's this big titan of a show that everyone on the planet has seen in some point of their lives. I'm really happy it's like that, but still, introductory episodes like this are fun to see. Well, not really introductory episodes, just episodes that can serve as good introductions. Perhaps the thing that people remember the most about Survival of the Idiots is the Dirty Dan and Pinhead Larry face-off, because the whole thing starts with Sandy having dreams about these Texan outlaws, and SpongeBob and Patrick kind of going all in on it and role-playing as them, and it is really funny. I'm happy that it's one of the more well-remembered jokes of the season, because they go a lot of places with it, and there's a lot of places to go with it after this. There are Dirty Dan and Pinhead Larry tombstones ready, so maybe they're very famous crooks down in this version of Texas, or maybe very famous crooks under the sea, because you see their tombstones in Shopping List in Season 11, so I don't know. Maybe it's just a slang term for crooks in this universe. I hope it does become slang term for crooks and criminals and outlaws sometime in the future, because it's a very fun way of saying it. And of course, how could we forget Patrick's classic line, "Who you calling Pinhead?" Well, he actually has a head that looks like a pin. I don't know why he looks like that for a sec, but it's inconspicuous. It's just a fun little joke. And something I really like about this episode is that when there is slapstick violence, like, aside from making giant snow mallets and hammers and stuff, there is logic to it, like, and physics and force and stuff. Like, when they go a little too hard in their playtime, the belly button lint headphones fall off of Sandy, because that relates back to what they were trying to get out of, trouble with her. And I do really like this chase scene quite a bit. Could have been a little funnier, but I'm happy with the places they go with it, and the few jokes that they do make with it. And, I guess one more thing to talk about with this really, really intense chase scene underway is the wintry aesthetic of this episode. I love how they made it so the tree dome's shield is this light blue, which goes well with the snow to make it look like they're out in a snowy field. That's awesome. That's really good attention to detail. I think we're also coming up on SpongeBob's disappearing feet in one little visual bit. Again, not really going to notice it until you see it, but when you do, it never leaves. But yeah, also at night, the shields look a little darker, and that works too. I have never been in a snowy environment, so I can still totally get how this can be fun at day and dangerous at night. So even to a person like me, they got this very chilled out, well, not chill or chilled out, but very, gosh, there aren't really many synonyms for cold and, dangerous and disturbing, but yeah, they do go a few places with it, like Patrick almost freezing part of his skull off. That's pretty disturbing, but hey, it's just a little bit, doesn't really impact the rest of the episode. Like, there's an episode of Season 6 where he rips his flesh off, and it's like that for the rest of the scene, and you don't really get stuff like that in Season 2. You usually see the characters a little hurt for one scene, and then that's it. That's all you need. How much longer have we got on this episode? 3 minutes. There is still a little bit to talk about, like really laying it on thick that Sandy's the only character of the main cast with fur, and making advantage out of that for the last little bit of the episode. And then there's our little live action bit. And this little bit where they're trying to rip fur off of Sandy is it's just really good, really well done, even if it is a bit unfair on her part. But I really like the dynamic between SpongeBob and Patrick. SpongeBob's being a bit more cautious, but Patrick's doing everything he can to speed up the process, and that's just great too. Maybe I'm just a little out of practice, but there wasn't really too much to talk about with this episode. I mean, I can say I like the look of it and I like the jokes in it. I guess one thing that does bother me a bit about the episode is the music they use at the title card and at the very end. I don't know, it's very weird. It kind of puts me off guard. Doesn't really fit the vibe of the episode to me, but it's production music. It isn't really the end of the world if it doesn't fit. Oh, but this is also really cool, seeing how SpongeBob and Patrick would use hair if they could. Patrick really stuffing it in certain places, and SpongeBob being a little stylish with it. They have made a few jokes about SpongeBob maybe having hair. Maybe he doesn't, or does he? And he does comb it a bit in a later episode, but otherwise, it's a rare sight to see, and I don't know what else I can say. I'm just really happy with this episode. I might... what can I say about it? Oh yeah, this last little bit of it turning into spring, that's fun. Yeah. I'm thankful that this is one of the episodes they did an audio commentary for, so that I had those little tidbits about the water helmets and the ceiling and the original name. They didn't make too many audio commentaries in the original episodes, but hey, those that did have audio commentaries were fun episodes, and this is a fun episode too. Dumped was written by Walt Dorn, Paul Tibbett, and Meriwether Williams, and directed by Walt Dorn and Paul Tibbett. So, yeah, a little bit of a different crew from last time, but it's still a regular trio from this period in the show. And unfortunately, this is my second least favorite episode of season 2, but for a season as good as this, that's kind of a high honor, actually. Being that low means we can still look at it and go, where does it not succeed as well as in other places? And hey, it's still fairly entertaining despite its weird plot. And weird it is, because that's the most common complaint of it, is that the story is a little undercooked for something as dramatic as this, which doesn't need to be dramatic in the first place. It's a lot of different paradoxes of a story, and works a lot less for some people than me. Some people have gone on to say that it's actually their least favorite episode of the original run of SpongeBob, and I would not go that far. I don't even think it's in my bottom 5, but yeah, there are very obvious flaws with it. But I want to talk about the positives first. First, I really do like this joke of Gary going all over Patrick for a whole day into the night. That is very well done and well paced and stuff. And I do really like the use of the track Daytime Drama. It really sells whatever they're going for. And it is a pretty popular song. Like, some people use it and don't know that it's mostly associated with a SpongeBob episode. That joke about Patrick brushing his armpits may have been a bit far for me also, but not going to complain about all the jokes, because there are plenty of them that work, and that isn't the episode's biggest drawback, the jokes, but yeah. So the humor from this episode, again, this is another one for an alternate universe where SpongeBob didn't last very long. Most of the humor from this episode comes from the fact that SpongeBob and Patrick are getting into such a big fight over a snail that acts like a cat. But since Gary is such a big part of pop culture now, the joke isn't as shocking. It isn't as big as it once was, and not saying that the joke can't work, but the actual irony of them fighting over a snail as a pet isn't as strong as it once was when this episode was made. But I do get where they're coming from with it. I have also heard some people say that Patrick was acting a bit out of character, and there are a few points where he's acting a bit smug about it, almost owning Gary, but I don't think he's that much of a jerk in this. I do think that this is still the same Patrick, but with a little extra ownership of something that SpongeBob doesn't have. And also, this is the part of the episode where the soap opera atmosphere comes into play, and that really drags the episode down because it just isn't that funny. Like, soap operas are some of the unfunniest things in the world, and SpongeBob is supposed to be one of the funniest things in the world, and the two don't quite mix as well as they could. And this is almost like an episode of a soap about a kid hanging out with someone else's mother, and the mother getting a little sad over losing their little bundle of joy. And yeah, those sorts of plots do have a use. Everything you see on TV has a use, but yeah, it's not really cartoon gags, and this episode kind of struggles to have a real comedic hook. Again, I don't hate it. It's not a really bad episode, but it's just very apparent when you look at it as a comedy show that they go to a place like this and it just isn't super funny. Also, I think we're coming up on a shot where SpongeBob's shirt sleeve is green, and yeah, it's another one of those very small animation errors that really could have been cleaned up after a rerun or two, but yeah, it's there forever. Anyway, something that I do like about this episode is that I don't know if this is the first time we see other Bikini Bottom pets, but I do enjoy the angle of them showing off more underwater pets, how all snails are like cats, like Gary, though Gary is one of the more well-behaved ones. And I do really like worms, or sea worms, as dogs. I think that's really fun and adorable. I'm more of a dog person myself, so I'm maybe a bit biased. That's our question of the week this week, but more on that in a bit. Just trying to get through this really boring scene. So yeah, the pets that SpongeBob picks are Rex and Larry. Love Rex, never liked Larry. Like, even when I saw this episode when I was a young one, I knew that Larry wasn't too funny, and like, that's the thing with this episode, even when it isn't trying to be a soap opera, it still isn't really too entertaining. But this sort of thing is what you kind of have to expect with SpongeBob, because they have to make like 30 to 40 episodes a year, and every once in a while you gotta have a stanker like this, even if some parts of it are worth salvaging. I think that this little bit of SpongeBob doing dog faces at the dog has become one of those stock images that they use, and it is really dang ugly when you put it in the oil paint and make it a little more, yeah. But I do also really like this little bit of Rex ditching SpongeBob for no reason. Don't know why I like it. Shows that Rex kind of has a life of his own, unlike Larry. But, I may not like this little bit of the episode. As a kid, I thought that this was what the episode was all about and wasn't too entertained with it, but I do really like the snailer joke. That's a really lame joke that Gary used to love all the time, and I can kind of see why. And I also do like the bit of SpongeBob going over different snail names that he's made up: Gary, Larry, and later Jerry, because Jerry is just a live action snail that he has in his hand. Um, but yeah, there also is a little bit coming up where SpongeBob makes a extremely sad face, and I remember back during the whole creepypasta craze that someone made up a story where they edited the frame for a little bit to make it a little more unnerving, and said that this was a SpongeBob episode that played. It was just this bit, and for like one frame you see something horrible, and I never even bothered watching like the videos and stuff because that just seems like a very boring creepypasta. I know this is where I kind of am at this episode, talking about stuff unrelated to SpongeBob, but yeah, even an episode like this has a legacy like that. Go figure with this show. Oh, I think it is about this frame that you get it. It is when he's about to cry into the soap for the laundry things. But, okay, one more thing about this ending to the episode. It kind of shows why Gary episodes usually aren't among the best of their kind. And it's because Gary is just a pet in an episode like this, and pets don't have a lot of agency. Like, this whole ending is resolved because Gary gets a cookie in Patrick's pants, which he apparently never bothered to get during any of their sleepovers. And, I've got a bit of an issue with plots just ending like that. Like, the whole thing didn't really matter. And you get that a lot with Gary episodes, which is why I actually do kind of respect what they went with giving Gary a characterization later on of someone who is sometimes a little tired of SpongeBob's treatment of him, kind of a bit stuck up in his ways, being a cat and all. And the reason I say that is because at least then, in episodes like Have You Seen the Smell, and even something like Grooming Gary, there is a bit of an edge to him. There is a bit more character to him. He doesn't really have much of a character here. He's just a plot device, and you don't want to see characters being plot devices, and Gary is by and large a character. Which is why I think that this episode isn't really the best. Like, again, it's not the worst ever, but there are definitely problems with it. And yeah, even with in an episode like this where there are obvious like story issues and tonal issues, you still get some good bits out of it that are worth keeping around in pop culture. And that's what you want. Also, an episode that doesn't run for too long, because Survival of the Idiots, that's what you get for being overtime. You were 12 minutes long. SpongeBob episodes have to be 11 minutes. Sorry, buddy. So that was Survival of the Idiots and Dumped. Pretty all over the place today, but last time, way back in Christmas Who, I asked you for the question, do you think that SpongeBob should do more holiday specials? And I got a lot of very positive answers. Super Mario Plushes says that I definitely think SpongeBob should make more holiday specials. Tiara Hall gives off some ideas for holiday specials, like a National Sandwich Day and a World Chocolate Day. Very unique ideas for episodes. Those could be fun if they make fun of those sorts of holidays. I mean, they've done Leif Erikson Day. What else can they do? Super Seal says that he wants a SpongeBob Thanksgiving. That could be fun, but yeah, don't celebrate it. Maybe it could introduce me to some of its things. Mr. P says they want SpongeBob to return to April Fool's Day and Valentine's Day, and those could be pretty fun. Like, there is some... Those older April Fool's and Valentine's Day episodes have aged quite a bit, so I'd like to see them do that again. And Jack McGinn's backup account says, yes, they should. That's all I'll have up for now, but my question of the week for you this week is, if you lived in Bikini Bottom, would you have a pet snail or a pet worm? Worms sound pretty gross, but they could be very loyal, trusting, always by your side until they ditch you. But yeah, Mr. Krabs has a worm. Doesn't sound great out of context. Uh, Join me again, follow the playlist, for in a few weeks' time, I'll get into the aggressive world of fandom and driving with no free rides, and I'm your biggest fanatic. Goodbye for now.